The phone vibrated on my desk, its buzz slicing through the quiet of my apartment like a blade. It was 9:47 p.m., and the name on the screen, Ethan Caldwell, made my heart lurch. My boss, calling after hours, when his wife was out of town. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. Ethan wasn't just my boss. He was the creative director at Pinnacle Designs, a Seattle firm where I, Javier Morales, a 28-year-old graphic designer, had clawed my way up from intern to junior lead in 3 years. His calls were rare, always professional, but tonight felt different, dangerous, like stepping onto a tightrope without a net. "Javier, I need you at the office." Ethan's voice was low, urgent, when I answered. "Now? It's personal." Personal. The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. I glanced at the half-finished mock-up on my laptop, the glow of Seattle's skyline spilling through my window. I should have said no, should have kept the line between us firm. But something in his tone, a crack, a plea, pulled me in. "I'm on my way," I said, already grabbing my jacket. The office was a ghost town when I arrived, the hum of computers replaced by silence. Ethan's corner office glowed at the end of the hall, a beacon in the dark. I knocked, my pulse racing, and stepped inside. He stood by the window, his silhouette sharp against the city lights. At 40, Ethan was everything I wasn't: polished, confident, married. His blue eyes met mine, and for a moment, the world shrank to just us. "Javier," he said, stepping closer, "I need to tell you something. Something I've buried for years." His voice trembled, and I saw it then. The mask he wore, the one I'd glimpsed in stolen glances during late-night projects, was slipping. I'd always known I was different. Growing up in a small Texas town, I'd hidden my truth behind football games and fake crushes, moving to Seattle to breathe freely as a gay man. But Ethan? He was a mystery, a man whose charm masked a deeper struggle. His wife, Claire, was a constant presence, photos on his desk, her name in every company toast. Yet here he was, unraveling before me. "I've watched you," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your passion, your fire. It's woken something in me." He paused, his hand brushing mine, electric and fleeting. "I don't know how to do this, Javier, but I can't keep pretending." My breath caught. This was my boss, a man whose life was a perfect facade. Was he saying what I thought? I wanted to run, to protect myself, but his vulnerability anchored me. "Ethan, what are you asking?" I managed, my voice steady despite the storm inside. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sank into his chair, head in his hands. "I'm asking for a chance to figure this out. With you." His words were a confession, a grenade lobbed into the safe world I'd built. I should have walked away, but I didn't. I stayed, and that choice changed everything. The next morning, the office buzzed with its usual chaos, but I was a wreck. Every glance from Ethan during the team meeting felt like a spotlight. My coworker, Aisha, noticed. "You okay, Javi?" she asked, her brow furrowed. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Just tired," I lied, dodging her gaze. Aisha was sharp, a friend who'd seen me through late-night deadlines and bad dates. If she suspected something, I was doomed. Ethan, meanwhile, played his role perfectly. Charming, professional, untouchable. But I saw the cracks. The way his hand lingered when he passed me a file. The way his eyes softened when no one else was looking. That night, he texted, "Meet me at the pier." 8 p.m. I went, because despite the risk, I was drawn to him like a moth to flame. The Seattle waterfront was alive with tourists and street performers, but Ethan stood apart, his coat collar up against the wind. "I'm sorry for last night," he said, staring at the water. "I shouldn't have put you in that position." "Then why did you?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. "You're married, Ethan. You have a life I can't touch." He turned to me, his face raw. "I don't love her the way I should. I never have. I married Claire because it was expected, because I was too afraid to face who I am." His words hit me like a punch. I'd spent years embracing my truth, fighting for it. To hear Ethan, a man who seemed to have it all, admit he was trapped, it broke something in me. We walked along the pier, the Ferris wheel's lights spinning above us. He told me about his childhood in Boston, the pressure to be the perfect son, the years of denying his attraction to men. I shared my own story, coming out at 19, the family I'd lost and found again in friends like Aisha. For the first time, we weren't boss and employee. We were just two men, lost in a world that demanded we hide. "I don't know what this means," Ethan said, stopping to face me. "But I know I feel something real with you." His hand grazed mine again, and this time, I didn't pull away. The city hummed around us, but in that moment, it was just us, teetering on the edge of something forbidden and beautiful. The days that followed were a tightrope walk. Every meeting, every project review, was charged with unspoken tension. Ethan's presence was a constant pull, his voice a low hum that stirred something deep in me. I tried to focus on my designs, but my mind kept drifting to that night on the pier, to the way his hand felt against mine. At home, I paced my apartment, wrestling with what this meant. I'd dated before, casual flings, a few serious relationships, but nothing like this. Ethan was married, my boss, a man whose life could unravel if anyone found out. Yet the thought of him, vulnerable and honest, made my chest ache. I wanted to protect him, to pull him into my world, but the risks were enormous. Aisha cornered me at lunch one day, her eyes narrowing. "Spill it, Javi. You've been weird for days." We were at a cafe near the office, the clatter of plates masking our conversation. I wanted to tell her, to unburden myself, but I couldn't. Not yet. "It's just work stress," I said, poking at my salad. She didn't buy it, but she let it go, her gaze lingering like she was piecing together a puzzle. Aisha was family to me. The sister I'd chosen after my own rejected me. Her suspicion was a warning. I couldn't keep this secret forever. Ethan and I started finding excuses to be alone. Late-night revisions, coffee runs that stretched too long. Each moment was a stolen fragment of something bigger, something neither of us could name. One evening, in the empty office, he showed me a sketch he'd drawn years ago, a charcoal portrait of a man he'd loved in college but never pursued. "I was too scared," he admitted, his voice thick. "I chose safety over truth." I reached for the sketch, my fingers brushing his. "You're not that person anymore," I said, my heart pounding. "You're here, now with me." His eyes locked on mine, and for a moment, I thought he'd kiss me. But he pulled back, the weight of his wedding ring a silent barrier. The guilt gnawed at me. Claire wasn't just a name. She was a person, a woman who trusted Ethan. I'd seen her at company events, all smiles and elegance, oblivious to the storm brewing in her husband's heart. I didn't want to be the other man, the wrecker of homes, but I couldn't stop wanting him. It was a war between my heart and my conscience, and I was losing. One night, Ethan invited me to his house. Claire was at a conference in Chicago, and he said he needed help with a client pitch. I knew it was a lie, but I went anyway. His home was a sleek modern masterpiece, all glass and steel, but it felt cold, like a stage set for a life he didn't want. We sat on his couch, a bottle of wine between us, and talked, really talked, about dreams, fears, the lives we'd imagined as kids. "I wanted to be an artist," he said, swirling his glass. "Not this corporate shell, but I didn't have the guts to fight for it." His eyes met mine, raw and searching. "You do, Javier. You live so fiercely. It's why I can't stop thinking about you." I leaned closer, the wine loosening my restraint. "Then stop thinking," I whispered, "and do something." His breath hitched, and for a heartbeat, I thought he'd close the distance. But he stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "I can't," he said, his voice breaking. "Not yet." The rejection stung, but it wasn't about me. It was about him, his fear, his cage. I left that night with a promise to myself. I wouldn't push him. If this was real, he'd have to choose it. But as I drove home, his words echoed, "I can't stop thinking about you." And I knew I was already too deep. Weeks passed, and the line between professional and personal blurred further. Ethan started confiding in me about his marriage, how he and Claire had drifted apart, how their life was more partnership than passion. She deserves better, he said one night over coffee, his voice heavy with guilt. But I don't know how to give it to her. I wanted to scream that he deserved better too, that he deserved to live his truth. But I held back, afraid of tipping the fragile balance we'd found. Instead, I threw myself into work, hoping it would distract me. Aisha noticed my intensity, joking that I was gunning for Ethan's job. If only she knew the truth. One afternoon, Ethan called me into his office for a project review. The door closed, and he pushed a folder aside, his eyes locking on mine. "I'm trying, Javier," he said, his voice low. "I'm trying to be brave, like you." Before I could respond, he stepped closer, his hand cupping my cheek. The touch was electric, and I froze, torn between pulling away and leaning in. The door swung open. Aisha stood there, files in hand, her eyes widening. "Oh, sorry," she stammered, backing out. Ethan stepped back, his face pale, and I mumbled an excuse about deadlines. But the damage was done. Aisha wasn't stupid. She'd seen the tension, the closeness. I caught her later, begging her to keep quiet. "Javi, what's going on?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. "You're playing with fire." She was right, but I couldn't stop. Ethan and I met again that weekend, this time at a quiet bar outside the city. The dim lights hid us from the world, and for once, we let ourselves be honest. He told me about the first man he'd loved, a painter who'd left when Ethan couldn't commit. I shared my own scars, rejection, loneliness, the fear of never being enough. Our hands intertwined under the table, a small rebellion against the world. "I'm falling for you," Ethan said, his voice barely audible. The words were a gift and a curse, filling me with hope and dread. I wanted to say it back, but the weight of his marriage, his career, our lives held me silent. Instead, I squeezed his hand, letting my touch speak for me. The next day, Claire returned. Ethan's demeanor shifted, cooler, more guarded. I hated it, hated her, hated myself for hating her. She didn't know, didn't deserve this. But neither did we. I started avoiding Ethan, burying myself in work, but he found ways to pull me back, late-night texts, a brush of his hand in the hallway. Each moment was a reminder of what we could be and what we couldn't. Aisha confronted me again, this time at my apartment. "You're in love with him, aren't you?" she said, her voice gentle but piercing. I couldn't lie anymore. I told her everything. The calls, the peer, the almosts. She listened, her face a mix of worry and compassion. "Javi, you're my family," she said. "But this could destroy you both. You need to decide what you're willing to risk." Her words haunted me. I wanted Ethan, but at what cost? His marriage? My career? Our hearts? I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. I couldn't walk away. Not yet. The breaking point came at the company's annual gala, a glittering event at a downtown hotel. Ethan and Claire arrived arm in arm, the perfect couple, while I stood on the sidelines, a glass of champagne in hand, my heart in knots. He caught my eye across the room, his gaze a silent apology. I wanted to hate him, but all I felt was longing. Later, in a quiet corner of the ballroom, he found me. "Dance with me," he said, his voice low. It wasn't a question. The band played a slow jazz number, and we moved to the edge of the dance floor, hidden by shadows. His hand rested on my waist, tentative but firm, and for those few minutes, the world disappeared. It was just us, swaying to the music, our breaths mingling. "You're killing me," I whispered, my voice cracking. "You can't keep doing this, giving me pieces of you, then pulling back." "I know," he said, his eyes glistening. "I'm trying to find a way. I don't want to hurt her, but I don't want to lose you." His words were a knife, cutting through the fantasy I'd built. He was still hers, and I was the secret. The gala ended, but the night didn't. Ethan drove me home, the silence between us heavy. At my apartment, he followed me inside, uninvited but wanted. We stood in my living room, inches apart, the air thick with everything unsaid. "I'm leaving her," he said finally, his voice steady. I can't live a lie anymore. I want you, Javier. I want us. I should have questioned him, should have demanded details, but I didn't. I kissed him, hard and desperate, pouring every ounce of longing into it. He kissed me back, his hands framing my face, and for the first time, there were no barriers, no guilt, just us. But reality crashed in the next morning. Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Where were you last night? He stared at it, his face pale, and I knew. He wasn't ready. Not really. I need time, he said, his voice hollow. To do this right. I nodded, but inside, I was breaking. Time was a luxury we didn't have. Aisha's warning echoed in my mind, and I wondered if I was strong enough to wait, to risk everything for a man who might never be mine. The weeks after the gala were torture. Ethan was distant, buried in meetings and excuses, while I drowned in doubt. Had I imagined it? The kiss, the promise? I threw myself into a new project, a campaign for a local nonprofit, hoping work would numb the ache. But every late night in the office reminded me of him, of us. Aisha became my anchor, checking in daily, her concern a lifeline. You don't have to go through this alone, she said one evening, bringing takeout to my apartment. I told her about the gala, the kiss, Ethan's vow to leave Claire. She listened, her face unreadable. Javi, I want you to be happy, she said finally. But happiness shouldn't hurt this much. She was right, but I couldn't let go. Not when Ethan's eyes still found mine in crowded rooms. Not when his texts, short, careful, kept me tethered to hope. One night, he called again, his voice raw. I told Claire I want a separation, he said. It's happening. My heart soared, then crashed. What does that mean for us? I asked, afraid of the answer. It means I'm trying, he said. But it's messy. She's hurt, angry. I need you to be patient. Patience was a word I was growing to hate. But I agreed, because what else could I do? The office became a battlefield. Whispers followed me, colleagues noticing Ethan's distraction, my late-night presence. Aisha warned me about HR, about the risks to my career. You're too good for this, Javi, she said. You deserve someone who's all in. But I wasn't ready to give up, not when Ethan was finally taking steps toward freedom. One evening, he invited me to a cabin in the Cascades, a weekend getaway to clear his head. Against my better judgment, I went. The cabin was rustic, surrounded by pines, the air sharp with autumn. We cooked dinner, laughed, pretended the world didn't exist. That night, in front of a crackling fire, he kissed me again, slower this time, deliberate. I'm in love with you, he said, his voice steady. I'm doing this for us. I believed him because I wanted to. We made love that night, the first time we'd crossed that line, and it felt like a vow. But as we lay there, tangled in each other, I couldn't shake the fear that this was temporary, that the world would reclaim him. Reality hit hard when we returned. Claire had hired a lawyer, and Ethan was drowning in guilt. He moved into a small apartment, but the separation wasn't clean. She called constantly, her voice a ghost in our conversations. I tried to be supportive, but each call chipped away at my hope. At work, the tension was unbearable. A colleague, Mark, made a snide comment about favorites in a meeting, his eyes flicking between me and Ethan. Aisha pulled me aside later, her voice urgent. People are talking, Javi. You need to be careful. I brushed it off, but the fear of exposure was real. If HR got involved, I could lose my job. Ethan could lose everything. One night, Ethan showed up at my apartment, his face haggard. Claire knows, he said, his voice flat. Not about you, but she suspects I'm in love with someone else. My stomach dropped. What did you tell her? I asked. Nothing, he said. I couldn't. But I'm done hiding. I'm telling her the truth tomorrow. His words were brave, but his eyes were terrified. I pulled him into my arms, holding him as he shook. For the first time, I saw the cost of his choice, not just to me, but to him. The next day, he was gone from the office. Aisha texted me, Ethan's on leave. HR's asking questions. Panic gripped me. Had Claire confronted him? Had someone seen us? I threw myself into work, avoiding the curious stares, but the office felt like a trap. That night, Ethan called. I told her, he said, his voice raw. About me, about us. She's devastated, but she deserved the truth. Relief and fear warred inside me. What now? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. But I'm free, Javier. For the first time, I'm free. His words were a lifeline, but the uncertainty lingered. Freedom came at a cost, and we were both paying it. The fallout was brutal. Ethan resigned from Pinnacle Designs, citing personal reasons, but the rumors flew. I kept my head down, focusing on my work, but the whispers followed me. Aisha stood by me, deflecting questions, but I felt exposed, raw. My career, my heart, everything was on the line. Ethan and I met in secret at cafes and parks, stealing moments amidst the chaos. He was different now, lighter, but haunted. I didn't know it would feel like this, he said one evening, as we sat by Lake Washington. Free, but broken. You're not broken, I said, taking his hand. You're just starting. I meant it, but I was scared too. We were building something new, but the world wasn't kind to stories like ours. Claire filed for divorce, and Ethan faced a storm of judgment from friends, family, his old life. I faced my own, colleagues who side-eyed me, a promotion that suddenly felt out of reach. But we kept going. We moved in together, a small apartment in Capitol Hill, a place where we could be us. Aisha visited, bringing wine and laughter, reminding me I wasn't alone. You're brave, Javi, she said one night. Braver than you know. The truth was, I didn't feel brave. I felt fragile, like one wrong move could shatter us. But Ethan's love was a tether, grounding me. We cooked together, danced to old records, built a life from the ashes of our old ones. It wasn't perfect, guilt lingered, and the world wasn't always kind, but it was ours. One night, as we lay in bed, Ethan turned to me, his eyes soft. You're my home, Javier, he said. I was lost for so long, but you found me. His words echoed the call that started it all, the night he asked for a chance. I'd given it to him, and in return, he'd given me himself. We weren't a fairy tale. We were messy, flawed, human, but we were real, and that was enough. As Seattle's lights glittered outside our window, I knew we'd face whatever came next, together.